Oh, don't tell me you actually thought this invitation was for you.
You may want to read the host line again.
He's the principal owner on tonight's guest record.
Now, shall we start again?
The first joke came before dessert, while the brass quartet was still playing near the east windows of the Meridian Arts Conservatory, and Jordan Vance was trying to hand his coat check ticket to a volunteer in a silver vest. "Not that line, sweetheart," his wife said, loud enough for the donors at table 12 to hear. "That one is for patrons." A few people laughed because Eleanor made it sound harmless, the way expensive cruelty often dressed itself for a room with chandeliers. Jordan stood with his ticket between two fingers, his dark wool tuxedo still carrying a dusting of cold from the February sidewalk, and watched the young volunteer hesitate. The invitation in Jordan's breast pocket said Founders Circle Reception. His name was printed in raised navy ink beside Eleanor's because she had asked that it be done that way. One married line, no separate titles, no hint of the ownership trust that had funded the building they were standing in. He had agreed because tonight was supposed to be about her mother. The conservatory's winter gala smelled of lemon oil, lilies, and old money pressed into new suits. Violins warmed up behind a velvet rope. Champagne moved through the room on black trays, catching light every time a server turned. Along the walls, framed renderings showed the planned expansion: a glass atrium, rehearsal studios, a public music library, all carrying the name of Eleanor's late mother, Sylvia March. Jordan had signed the final donor match that morning, not as a favor to his wife, but because Sylvia had been the first person in Eleanor's family who ever spoke to him like he belonged at the table. Now Eleanor was smiling at him as if she were rescuing him from embarrassment. "Jordan gets confused at these things," she told the volunteer. "He's brilliant with numbers, but social order is not his language." The volunteer's eyes flicked to Jordan's face, then to his hands, then to the ticket. She was maybe 22, with a clipboard tucked against her ribs and the thin panic of someone who had been told not to upset donors. Behind her, a gray-haired man in a velvet dinner jacket stopped mid-conversation. His wife leaned closer, waiting for the punchline. Jordan kept his voice even. "My coat was checked under Vance." The volunteer looked down at the alphabetical cards. "Yes, sir. I see it." Eleanor laughed again, sharper this time. "He means the standard check, not the patron room. The private salon is for board families and major sponsors." "It's all right, Maya. He's with me." Jordan turned his head slowly. The words were small, almost delicate, but they carried a whole architecture inside them. With "not invited," "not entitled," "borrowed." Maya's thumb paused on the card marked Vance. A second card sat behind it, cream stock instead of white, sealed with a blue clip. Jordan recognized the clip because his office had approved the protocol. Blue for controlling donor, cream for trustee access, white for general guest. No one here was supposed to know that except the gala operations team and the conservatory's interim director. Eleanor knew he knew. That was the part that made his stomach go still. "Could you retrieve the coat, please?" Jordan asked. "Of course," Maya said. "No," Eleanor said, not loudly, but with the clean authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Leave it. He can wait with the drivers if he needs air." A man near the bar gave a short laugh into his glass. Someone else murmured, "Eleanor, you're terrible," in the delighted tone people used when they had no intention of stopping anything. Jordan saw two board members glance over and then away, not confused, not unaware, merely calculating whether decency would cost them a future table placement. He slipped the ticket back into his pocket. "I don't need air." Eleanor stepped closer, the diamonds at her throat making small cold flashes. "Then try not to make a scene." Jordan almost answered too quickly. He almost said what his father used to warn him not to spend in public. Proof, anger, history, all laid out for people determined to treat dignity like a performance. Instead, he looked across the room at the mural above the main stair, where Sylvia March had painted children holding instruments that were too large for them, their faces tilted toward a music they could not yet play. He had one private reason for staying quiet. Sylvia's dedication plaque would be unveiled in 20 minutes, and her granddaughter, Eleanor's niece Camille, was supposed to sing. Camille had called Jordan 3 nights earlier, whispering from a practice room. terrified that the family would make the evening about reputation instead of the scholarship program Sylvia wanted. Jordan had promised her he would not let the night collapse before she had a chance to stand at the microphone. That promise now sat heavier than the blue-clipped card behind the desk. A broad-shouldered security supervisor in a black suit approached from the corridor, his earpiece wire disappearing beneath his collar. Eleanor must have signaled him when Jordan glanced at the coat cards, because he arrived too fast for coincidence. His badge read Nolan Price. "Everything all right here, Mrs. Vance?" he asked. Eleanor did not look at Jordan when she answered. "My husband is having one of his moments. I think he needs to be moved away from donor intake before people start arriving." Jordan felt Maya's clipboard lower an inch. "One of my moments," he repeated. Nolan Price studied him with the quick, practiced assessment of a man who had already chosen the safer version of the story. Black man near the patron desk. White wife embarrassed. Donors watching. The shape of the room made the decision for him before any policy did. "Sir," Nolan said, "I'm going to ask you to step to the side." Jordan reached into his breast pocket and drew out the invitation, keeping his fingers away from the cream card beneath it. "I am on the guest list. My access includes the patron salon." Nolan barely looked. "This area is restricted. So check the list." Eleanor's smile vanished for half a second. Not fear, irritation, the kind that came when a prop did not stay where she placed it. "Nolan," she said, "please don't indulge this. My family has supported this conservatory for 30 years. A trustee nearby turned at that, hearing the old March name and the money attached to it. Jordan saw the calculation ripple again. March family. Public embarrassment. Black husband refusing direction. No one asked why a man invited under Founder's Circle needed permission from his wife to stand beside a coat desk. Nolan placed one hand between Jordan and the table. "Sir, last warning." Jordan looked at the hand, then at Maya. The blue-clipped card was still there, half visible, waiting for someone with courage or proper training to read it. Maya's eyes met his for the briefest moment. She had seen the card. She knew something did not match. Jordan lowered the invitation but did not move. "I'm asking you," he said, "to record that I requested verification before removal." Nolan's face tightened. "You can make that request outside." The quartet stopped playing, not all at once. One violin trailed a note longer than the others, thin as thread, and the conversations around them softened into a listening silence no one wanted to own. Eleanor gave the room an apologetic little shrug. "My husband loves drama," she said. This time the laughter came easier, because Nolan had already stepped close enough to turn insult into procedure. He took Jordan by the elbow, not hard, but officially, and with half the gala watching, the security supervisor escorted the man whose signature controlled the conservatory's $20 billion ownership trust away from the patron desk without checking the card clipped under his name. Nolan Price did not drag Jordan. He knew better than that. He guided him with two fingers at the elbow, the way a man might handle a spill before it spread across silk tablecloths. Jordan let him do it for 9 steps. Not because he accepted the insult. Not because he feared the room. He counted steps because the conservatory's security policy, the one revised after last year's protest outside the donors' luncheon, required staff to offer a verbal reason, identify the restricted zone, and provide a verification option before removing any ticketed guest from a public-facing event. The policy existed in the operations binder. Jordan had read it on a plane to Denver with a cup of burnt coffee cooling beside his laptop. At step 10, near a marble column wrapped in ivy, he stopped. Nolan's fingers tightened. "Sir, I'm asking again," Jordan said. "What policy am I violating?" Behind them, Eleanor's voice floated through the thinning music. "He does this when he feels overlooked. Please don't let it spoil the evening." The phrase found its mark. Feels overlooked. It turned a denied access check into a husband's insecurity. It made the people watching comfortable because now they could believe they were observing a marriage problem instead of participating in a public wrong. Nolan shifted his body between Jordan and the room. "You're interfering with donor intake. I handed over a coat ticket. You refused a staff instruction. I requested that staff check the access card filed under my name." Nolan glanced past him to the boat desk where Maya stood motionless with the clipboard pressed flat against her waist. A second volunteer had joined her, whispering urgently. Jordan saw Maya's eyes move once toward the cream card and then down again. "You can explain all that to the event director outside the reception area," Nolan said. "Is that director here?" "She's occupied." "Then call her." Nolan's mouth pressed into a thin line. "I'm not stopping the event because you don't like where your wife placed you." There it was, cleaner than the first insult because it sounded practical. The room did not need facts. It needed a version that kept the donor flow moving and protected the March family from embarrassment. Jordan had been recast as a disruption, and procedure was bending around that story. A woman in a sapphire dress leaned toward her husband. "I thought Eleanor said he worked in private equity." "Something like that," the husband murmured. Jordan heard both of them. He also heard the old elevator cables behind the wall, the faint knock and hum as equipment moved between floors. Sylvia had once told him the building sounded like an aging cello when no one was performing. He had laughed then, and she had tapped his wrist with the end of a paintbrush, serious as a judge. "Old places tell you what they are," she had said. "People do too." Eleanor crossed the floor toward them, her champagne untouched in one hand. She moved beautifully when she wanted witnesses, every step slow enough to suggest patience. "Jordan," she said, "come on. This is exactly what I meant." "What did you mean?" Her smile flickered. "You don't have to prove something every time you feel uncomfortable. I asked for verification. You asked to be treated like the center of a room that isn't about you." Nolan took that as permission. "Sir, we're done." A younger security guard appeared near the hallway, uncertain, his hand hovering near his radio. Jordan noticed his badge because he noticed systems when people tried to hide inside them. T. Reed. Reed's shoes were polished but wet at the soles, probably from the service entrance salt. He looked from Nolan to Jordan and did not move closer. "Mr. Price," Jordan said, "are you documenting this as a behavioral removal?" Nolan's eyes narrowed. "You don't need to worry about my paperwork. I do if the paperwork is false." Eleanor gave a soft laugh to the nearest donors. "He watches too many hearings." This time Maya spoke. "It is a blue clip," she said. The words were not loud, but they were the first honest sound the desk had made since the joke began. Nolan turned his head. Eleanor did too. Maya swallowed, the card under Vance. "It's blue clipped." The second volunteer stared at her as if she had knocked over a sculpture. Nolan said, "Maya, step back. I only mean the protocol says blue clip gets director verification before any access denial." Her voice trembled around the policy language, but she did not retreat from it. "That's what we were told at training." Eleanor's glass lowered a fraction. "She's new." Jordan looked at Maya and gave the smallest nod he could without making her the spectacle. Courage often arrived in an ordinary voice, carrying a clipboard and knowing it might cost a shift. Nolan reached for his radio. "Control, I need Ms. Bell in front intake," a crackle answered. "Director Bell is backstage with the plaque party." "Then send operations." "Copy." For the first time the room had to wait. That was when Eleanor stepped close enough that only Jordan could hear her. "Don't do this tonight," she whispered. He turned toward her, close enough to see a small makeup crease beside her mouth, the place where control kept failing to cover strain. "You did it tonight." Her eyes hardened. "You agreed to keep your name out of the program. I agreed not to make Sylvia's memorial about money. You agreed to let my family have this." Jordan almost missed the word because the quartet had started again too early, trying to sow music over the tear in the evening. This. Not the dedication, not the scholarship, the room. The authority to decide who belonged in it. A woman in a black operations headset arrived at a clipped walk, breathing as if she had crossed the entire building. Her badge read Lena Ortiz. She took in Nolan's hand on Jordan's elbow, Maya's white face, Eleanor's diamonds, and the half-circle of donors pretending not to stare. "What is the issue?" Lena asked. Nolan answered first. Guest refused redirection from restricted patron intake and became argumentative. Maya's lips parted, then closed. Jordan reached into his pocket, removed the white invitation, and held it beside the coat ticket. "I requested verification of the access card filed under my name." I was denied and moved before that verification occurred. Lena looked at the ticket. Then she looked at Maya. Pull the card. Eleanor's voice sharpened. Lena, this is a family matter. No, Lena said, still facing the desk. Now it is an access matter. Maya pulled the cream card from behind the white one. The blue clip caught the chandelier light, small and almost ridiculous for the weight it carried. Lena read the top line. Her expression did not collapse or whiten or perform revelation. She simply stopped breathing for one measured beat, then turned the card so Nolan could see the embossed seal of the Vance Meridian Trust. Nolan, she said, remove your hand. Nolan removed his hand as if the fabric of Jordan's sleeve had turned hot. The movement was small, but the people closest to them understood it before they understood why. A hand that had been confident a second earlier now hung useless at Nolan's side. Lena Ortiz kept the cream card between two fingers, not showing it to the room, not hiding it either. She had the manner of someone who knew procedure was not a shield unless you actually followed it. Mr. Vance, she said, I apologize. This should have been verified at intake. Eleanor inhaled through her nose. Lena. Lena did not look at her. I need to correct the access issue first. There is no issue, Eleanor said. He is my guest. Jordan felt the old familiar exhaustion settle behind his ribs, not surprise. Not even anger yet. Just the weight of watching someone rewrite reality in front of people willing to let the ink dry. He had seen it in boardrooms, in bank lobbies, in private clubs where staff learned to hear certain voices as instructions and others as noise. But hearing it from the woman who had slept beside him for 6 years made the room tilt in a quieter way. I am not your guest, he said. Eleanor's eyes flashed toward the donors. Jordan had not raised his voice, but the sentence had landed where the joke had begun. A waiter paused with a tray of champagne. Camille, in a pale green dress, appeared at the top of the stair with a program folded in both hands, her curls pinned back, and her mouth caught between confusion and dread. She was 18, still young enough to believe adults became honest when the stakes were high. Lena turned the card toward herself again. The file lists Jordan Vance as controlling trustee for tonight's preservation grant and expansion match. A murmur moved through the half-circle. Nolan looked at Eleanor, then away. Controlling trustee? The Vance Meridian Trust holds the building note, the renovation option, and the matching pledge agreement, Lena said. She kept her words clean, almost dry, which gave them more force. This card should have triggered director verification before any restriction, removal, or incident report. Jordan saw Eleanor's jaw move once before she smiled. That sounds dramatic, she said. The trust is his company structure. My family brought this institution into existence. Your mother brought part of its soul into existence, Jordan said before he could stop himself. The words came rougher than he meant. The rest has paperwork. Camille descended 3 steps and stopped. Lena handed the card back to Maya. Do not release that file to anyone except director level. Note the time and keep the intake sheet as is. Maya nodded quickly. Yes, Mom. Nolan cleared his throat. I was acting on a report from Mrs. Vance. You were acting without verification, Lena said. The younger guard Reed shifted near the hallway. Supervisor Price, should I log the hold? Nolan turned. Not now. Lena looked at Reed. Yes, log it. Access dispute patron intake, verification hold at 7:42 p.m. Include names of staff present. Reed's hand found his radio. For a second he seemed almost relieved to have an instruction that matched the training he had been given. Eleanor stepped between Jordan and the widening circle of attention. She kept her voice low, but the effort sharpened it. You are humiliating me. Jordan looked at her. He noticed the tiny things first because the larger ones hurt too much. The tremor in the champagne, the pressure mark where her ring pressed into skin, the way she stood with one shoulder angled toward the donors as if still posing for them. You made me the joke, he said. I asked for a list to be checked. You let them think I lied. You did. Color climbed her throat. I protected my mother's name from being swallowed by yours. That was the hidden truth beneath the public one, and once she said it, Jordan understood the shape of the past year. The insistence that his donations be anonymous. The seating charts that placed him one table removed from decisions. the biographies that called him spouse of Eleanor March Vance, while describing men with smaller gifts as visionaries. The polite corrections when he used the word our, not insecurity, erasure with manners. Lena's headset crackled. She pressed a finger to it, listened, and then looked at Jordan differently, not with fear, with the brisk recognition of a person who had just been told the ceiling was load-bearing. "Director Bell is on her way," she said. "She has asked that no further movement occur until she arrives." Nolan's expression tightened. "The dedication starts in 15 minutes. It may start after we know whether our security report is false," Lena said. That word changed the room again. False was not impolite. False had consequences. A trustee in a velvet jacket stepped forward, the same man who had laughed earlier. "Surely this can be handled privately. Mr. Vance, no one wants an unfortunate misunderstanding to overshadow Sylvia's evening." Jordan turned to him. "Then you should have misunderstood less comfortably." The man's face stiffened. Jordan regretted the sentence as soon as it left his mouth, not because it was untrue, but because it gave the room something easier to discuss than the record. Tone was the oldest escape hatch. He drew a breath and adjusted. "I want the original intake sheet preserved," he said. "I want the draft incident report preserved. I want the camera view at this desk held before the loop overwrites. And I want Camille's performance to happen tonight without this being put on her shoulders." At the stair, Camille pressed the folded program against her chest. Eleanor glanced up and saw her niece. Something like fear broke through the anger, but it did not soften into accountability. It turned sideways. "Camille, go backstage," she called. "Now." Camille did not move. "Aunt Elle, what did you do?" The question was young and devastating because it had no strategy in it. Eleanor's face closed. "This is adult business." Jordan stepped back from the column, giving everyone room to choose where they stood. "No, this is exactly the business. Sylvia built this place to resist." Director Patricia Bell arrived through the corridor with 4 officers behind her and a folder clutched against her black satin jacket. She was a small woman with silver hair cut to her chin, and the severe calm of someone who disliked surprises because surprises meant someone had failed upstream. Her eyes went first to the blue clip, then to Nolan, then to Jordan. "Mr. Vance," she said, "I have reviewed enough to know we owe you more than an apology." Eleanor gave a brittle laugh. "Patricia, please." Patricia Bell opened the folder. "No, Eleanor, we are past, please." She removed a printed page and placed it on the intake table beside the cream card. The page was not a donor list. Jordan recognized the heading before anyone else could read it. Emergency Preservation Notice. His office used that form only when a partner organization might alter or lose records tied to a governance breach. He had authorized the template, but he had not sent this one. Patricia looked at Jordan. "Your trust council transmitted this 5 minutes ago after receiving an automated alert from the access system. It appears the control trustee credential under your name was manually downgraded at 6:18 p.m. Lena went still. Maya whispered, "Manually?" Jordan looked at Eleanor. Her champagne glass finally stopped moving. The joke had become a record. Jordan did not look at the paper first. He looked at Eleanor because the room had finally reached the point where documents could say what people had spent months refusing to hear. Her mouth parted, then closed. She did not ask what manual downgrade meant. She did not ask who had authority to make one. She looked toward the board officers behind Patricia Bell, measuring how much they already knew. That was answer enough. Patricia placed a second page beside the first. The access system shows the credential was changed from trustee to spouse guest on a staff terminal assigned to the development office. Eleanor turned on her. "Are you accusing me of hacking your little badge system in front of half the city?" "No," Patricia said. "I am saying a change was made. We will preserve the record before anyone accuses anyone of anything." The phrase was careful. Jordan appreciated it, even through the hard pulse in his neck. Careful meant there would be a process. Careful meant Eleanor would not be punished because a room had gasped at the right moment. It also meant she could not float back into the party on charm and family history. Nolan Price rubbed his thumb against the side seam of his trousers. "Director Bell, I filed no written report yet. Then you will not write one from memory in private, Patricia said. You'll provide a statement with operations present. The velvet jacket trustee bristled. Patricia, this is becoming excessive. Jordan recognized him now, Benton Hale, real estate attorney, Old March donor, the kind of man who told stories about saving cultural institutions while negotiating easements that displaced small tenants. He had voted against the free community rehearsal hours twice. Sylvia used to call him a man who could turn a hymn into a lien. Patricia faced him. Benton, a controlling trustee, was misclassified, denied verification, and nearly removed from a donor event. We have a credential alteration on the same evening. Excessive would be pretending it is a seating dispute. Benton's lips thinned. Camille descended the remaining stairs, slow and stiff, still holding her program. Aunt Elle, she said. Did you change Uncle Jordan's card? Eleanor flinched at Uncle. She had never liked Camille calling him that in public, though Jordan had shown up at every school recital since the girl was 12, usually carrying flowers badly wrapped by his own assistant because he did not trust gala florists to remember sunflowers. Camille, go warm up, Eleanor said. I did warm up. Camille's voice cracked, and she hated that everyone heard it. I was waiting for you to come backstage, but you were down here laughing at him. Jordan took one step toward her, then stopped. This was the part he could make worse by trying to rescue her. Camille did not need another adult taking over her mouth. Eleanor's eyes shone, not with tears yet, but with fury under glass. You have no idea what it took for this family to be seen again after your grandmother died. Camille looked at the renderings on the wall. Grandma wanted the scholarship kids in the front row. They are in the balcony because the sponsors needed tables. Jordan lowered his gaze. There it was, the second wound beneath the first. Not only his name, not only the card. Sylvia's program had been rearranged into a donor parade, and Camille had known before he did. Patricia closed the folder. We will address the seating after the access issue. No, Jordan said. Everyone looked at him. He heard himself breathing harder than he wanted. The old building hummed around them, radiator heat clicking in the walls, glassware chiming as servers pretended to work. He had promised Camille he would not let the night collapse before she sang. But a promise made before new facts could become an excuse for cowardice if he held it too tightly. No, he said again, steadier. We address what can be fixed before the dedication begins. Eleanor let out a short laugh. Of course. Now you are directing the program. I am asking for the scholarship students to be seated where Sylvia's plan placed them. Benton Hale stepped forward. Those front tables were sold. They were pledged as part of the community dedication, Jordan said. The trust match includes public access benchmarks. If tonight's program removes the students from the dedication floor, that becomes material. Benton blinked. He had not expected contract language to arrive wearing a tuxedo and humiliation. Patricia turned to Lena. Pull the original seating plan. Lena nodded and spoke into her headset. Eleanor's composure began to fracture in small, ugly places. You would hold $20 billion over a seating chart? Jordan felt the temptation to answer with the full weight of the number. He hated that temptation. Money made a clean weapon because people already feared it. But Sylvia had not trusted him with her dream, so he could win a marriage fight by sounding rich. No, he said, I would hold a match over the terms attached to it. There is a difference. Maya at the desk exhaled as if she had been waiting for someone to name that difference. Reed, the younger guard, quietly moved to the side wall and positioned himself near the small black dome of the intake camera, not touching it, just standing close enough that no one else could. Nolan noticed. Reed. Reed did not look away from the camera. Director Bell ordered preservation. I am your supervisor, and I heard the director. The sentence was awkward, too blunt, almost scared. But it changed something in the room. The first person with very little power had chosen the record over the chain of command, and the second had followed. Eleanor saw it too. Her voice softened in the dangerous way it did when she wanted a private door. Jordan, please. We can talk upstairs. For 6 years, he said. Upstairs is where truth went to disappear. A few donors shifted. Someone set down a glass too hard. Jordan regretted that sentence less than the one before. It was not polished. It was not generous. It was what happened when a man discovered his quiet had been used as storage for someone else's lie. Lena returned with a tablet. Original seating plan shows 12 scholarship students and 2 instructors assigned to floor seating at tables 3 and 4. Current plan moved them to balcony overflow at 5:56 p.m. Patricia looked up sharply. Who authorized the change? Lena hesitated. Eleanor lifted her chin. I did. The major sponsors arrived with additional guests. Camille stared at her as if seeing the evening from the outside for the first time. Patricia's face lost its ceremonial warmth completely. Then we have 2 issues. Access misclassification and program noncompliance. Benton Hale raised both hands. Let's not turn this into an indictment. We can move a few chairs. No, Jordan said. You can move names. The room waited. He pointed to the front tables nearest the covered plaque. Sponsors who came for Sylvia will understand. Sponsors who came to be seen can enjoy the balcony they assigned to the children. For the first time all night, no one laughed. Patricia gave one nod to Lena. Restore the original seating plan. Eleanor whispered, You will regret making enemies of my family. Jordan looked at Camille, whose program was now bent in half from the pressure of her hands. Then he looked back at his wife. I think, he said, I confused peace with permission for too long. At the intake table, Maya clipped the cream card back under his name and wrote the time beside it. Ink, not memory. Procedure, not rumor. And across the room, as volunteers began lifting sponsor cards from the front tables, Eleanor's private joke became the first official correction of the night. The correction did not look dramatic at first. It looked like 2 volunteers carrying folded place cards in both hands, a banquet captain whispering apologies, and sponsors discovering that philanthropy felt different when it required surrendering a better view. Jordan stayed near the marble column while the room rearranged itself around a truth it should never have needed. The front tables lost names engraved in silver ink and gained handwritten cards for students from the East Ward Youth Orchestra. A boy in a too large navy blazer came down from the balcony carrying a cello case almost as tall as his shoulder. 2 girls followed him, one holding a flute case against her chest, the other smoothing her braids with nervous fingers as if a better seat required a different version of herself. Camille watched them come down. The anger in her face shifted into something worse, recognition. She had not only been asked to perform for her grandmother. She had been asked to decorate a room that had quietly moved her grandmother's promise out of sight. Eleanor stood apart, no longer laughing, no longer touching Jordan. Her champagne sat abandoned on a tray, the bubbles thinning. Benton Hale had retreated to a knot of trustees near the bar, where men with careful haircuts spoke in low tones and glanced at Jordan with the injured suspicion of people who believed consequences were impolite. Patricia Bell returned with a tablet in one hand and the emergency notice in the other. Mr. Vance, Trust Council is requesting a preservation conference. They can wait until after the dedication if you instruct them to. After Camille sings, Jordan said. Patricia nodded. Understood. Eleanor made a sound that was almost a laugh. So we are all pretending this is noble. Jordan turned toward her. No, we are trying to keep one piece of the night clean. You don't get to talk about clean, she said, softer than before. You walked into my mother's world and bought the walls. Camille flinched. Jordan absorbed it because arguing with the wound inside Eleanor would be easier than facing the damage outside it. There had been a time, early in their marriage, when he believed Eleanor's grief made her sharp. He had mistaken sharpness for pain in motion. But grief did not manually downgrade a credential. Grief did not move scholarship children into balcony overflow. Grief did not teach a security supervisor to treat a black husband as a disorder to be managed while donors smiled behind glass. I funded the terms she wrote, Jordan said. You funded a version of her that made you feel generous. That one struck closer. Not because it was fair, but because there was a sliver of fear inside it he recognized. Jordan had loved Sylvia's vision because it gave him a language for what money should do after his father died. He had been 19 when a landlord locked his father's auto shop over a disputed payment and refused to release the tools until a lawyer intervened. His father never said the word humiliation. He just sat at the kitchen table that night, cleaning grease from under his nails with no tools left to use the next morning. When Sylvia first showed Jordan the conservatory's cracked practice rooms, she had not asked for a naming gift. She had asked for heat that worked in January and doors that did not make poor children feel like visitors in their own talent. Maybe he had needed that too much. Before he could answer Eleanor, Reed approached Lena with his phone screen turned outward. Operations found the login record. Nolan Price's head snapped up. Why is he seeing that? Because I asked him to assist preservation, Lena said. Reed swallowed. The development terminal used Eleanor Vance's temporary administrator code. It was issued for seating changes only. Eleanor's face went blank in a way Jordan had never seen. Not startled. Calculating. Patricia held out her hand for the phone. Reed gave it to her. She read, then looked at Eleanor. Did you use your temporary code to alter Mr. Vance's access level? Eleanor's first answer was silence. Benton Hale stepped in before she could choose a better one. Patricia, temporary codes are shared all the time during gala setup. Half the committee had access to that office. That is not an answer, Patricia said. It is context. It is interference. Benton's expression hardened. Careful. The word was meant for Patricia, but Jordan felt its old institutional shape. Careful meant remember who writes checks. Careful meant do not embarrass the wrong family. Careful meant procedure could be flexible when status needed room. Patricia did not lower her eyes. Mr. Hale, the board conflict policy requires you to step back from this matter if you are advising a party involved. I am advising the institution. No, Jordan said. You are advising Eleanor. Benton turned slowly. You have no basis for that? Jordan looked at the tablet in Patricia's hand, then at Eleanor. At 5:34 p.m., Benton texted you that the trust table needed to look like a march table. At 5:56, the students were moved. At 6:18, my credential was downgraded. Eleanor stared at him. How would you know that? He wished she had denied it. A denial would have left some small, stupid room for hope. Patricia's eyes sharpened. Mr. Vance, Jordan drew the second card from his breast pocket, the one he had not shown Nolan. Cream stock, blue seal, folded once across the middle. Because my office received a consent request for all material program changes tied to the match. It included an attachment from the seating vendor. I did not open it during dinner because I trusted my wife. Camille covered her mouth. Jordan placed the folded card on the intake table. His hand was steady now, but only because something in him had gone past shaking. I am not asking this room to punish her by spectacle, he said. I am asking the institution to preserve the records, restore the program, and separate Sylvia's work from any family member who treated access like inheritance. Eleanor whispered, Jordan. For once, his name in her mouth did not sound like a correction. The ballroom doors opened behind them, and the first scholarship students stepped onto the dedication floor with their instruments. Uncertain whether they were being welcomed or exposed, Jordan turned from the trustees to Camille. Sing for them, he said. Camille looked at her aunt, then at the children taking the seats her grandmother had promised them. When she nodded, it was not obedience. It was a choice. The stage manager lifted the curtain cord, and as Camille walked toward the microphone, Patricia Bell signed the preservation hold across the bottom of the notice, making the altered credential, the moved students, and Eleanor's temporary code part of the same official record. Camille's first note did not rescue the room. It exposed it. Her voice came out lower than people expected from an 18-year-old in a pale green dress, warm at the center but unsteady around the edges. She sang the spiritual Sylvia had arranged for youth strings in her last year, not as a performance polished for donors, but as something carried. The cello boy found his opening 2 beats late. One violin came in thin, then corrected. The mistakes made the song harder to dismiss. They reminded the room that the children had not been props in Sylvia's plan. They were the point. Jordan stood near the intake desk, with his hands clasped in front of him, the way his father used to stand in church when he was trying not to cough. He watched Camille keep her eyes on the scholarship students instead of the trustees. That choice cost her. Eleanor's family occupied 3 tables to the right, and Jordan could feel their disapproval like heat from a stage lamp. But Camille did not look over once. Beside him, Lena Ortiz spoke quietly into her headset. Hold all card access logs from 5 p.m. forward. Pull the development office terminal activity. No one clears cache. No one touches the intake camera. Nolan Price shifted at the word camera. Reed noticed and moved half a step closer to the wall dome. Jordan saw it, and so did Lena. Supervisor Price, she said, still quiet, your radio and body camera remain active until you provide your statement. My body camera was not part of gala coverage, Nolan said. Was it on? He hesitated too long. Lena's eyes sharpened. Answer the question. Nolan glanced toward Eleanor, then caught himself. Yes. Jordan felt the turn before anyone announced it. The central evidence was no longer the blue-clipped card alone. The card showed what should have happened. Nolan's camera might show what did happen, including Eleanor's words, Maya's warning, and his own request for verification before removal. It would not prove everything. It would not show the terminal change or Eleanor's intent. But paired with the access log and the seating vendor record, it could turn a humiliating memory into a sequence no one could sand down. Patricia Bell stepped close to Jordan. I need to ask something before council joins. Do you want the dedication paused after the song? No, Jordan said. Mr. Vance, if we continue, some people will say you accepted the public program as sufficient correction. Then write down that I didn't. Patricia nodded once, respecting the answer but not softened by it. What do you want tonight specifically? Jordan looked toward the covered plaque. Sylvia's name waited under a white cloth tied with blue ribbon. He had imagined standing beside Eleanor when it was unveiled, saying nothing, letting the room applaud a woman who once scolded him for sending a check without visiting the classrooms. Now the cloth looked less like ceremony and more like a bandage. Restore the students to the dedication floor, preserve the records, remove Nolan from active event authority pending review, restrict Eleanor's temporary administrator code, and put Sylvia's scholarship language back into the remarks. Patricia wrote each item in the margin of the notice. The code restriction I can do immediately. The security reassignment too. The remarks may be harder. Benton controls the printed program. Then don't read the program, Jordan said. For the first time, Patricia almost smiled. That I can do. The song ended without a clean final chord. The last note from the cello wavered, found pitch, and faded into the high ceiling. Applause came slowly, then filled the hall in layers, some genuine, some guilty, some desperate to return the evening to shape. Camille bowed once. When she lifted her head, her eyes were wet, but her chin stayed level. Eleanor started toward the stage. Jordan moved before he had planned to. Let her come down on her own. Eleanor stopped. You don't get to separate me from my niece. I'm not separating you. I'm asking you not to use her as cover. Her face twisted. You think you know everything because a log gave you a sequence. No, he said. I know enough to stop pretending the sequence is accidental. Benton returned then, his velvet jacket smooth, his expression arranged into institutional concern. Patricia, the board officers agree we should convene privately during dinner. Mr. Vance can join us after the dedication, and Eleanor can clarify whatever confusion arose with the temporary code. Patricia looked past him. Which board officers? Benton turned. Only one of the 2 officers behind Patricia had followed him back. The other, a woman named Marisol Grant, whom Jordan had met once at a facilities audit, remained beside the scholarship tables, speaking with the instructors. She had removed 2 sponsor cards herself and was now directing servers to bring meals to the children first. Marisol crossed the floor with a folded sheet in her hand. I don't agree to private containment. Benton's cheeks tightened. Marisol. She ignored him and handed Patricia the sheet. The original donor agreement says the community placement requirement is public-facing, measurable, and part of the release condition for the second tranche. Moving the students upstairs was not a courtesy adjustment. It was a breach. Eleanor's voice came thin. You're taking his side? Marisol looked at her with visible sadness. I'm taking the document's side. That is what a board's for when friendship gets expensive. The sentence did not sound rehearsed. It sounded tired. Jordan felt something in his chest loosen and hurt at the same time. An ally had arrived, but not to praise him. To hold the institution to a line he could not hold alone without becoming the story Eleanor wanted him to be. Across the room, Camille stepped down from the stage. She walked toward Jordan, then stopped in front of her aunt first. "Grandma told me he was the only donor who asked where the practice room heaters were," she said. Eleanor's eyes filled at last. "Camille, please." Camille shook her head. "No. You made me sing in a room where you moved the kids she loved out of sight." Then she turned to Jordan and handed him the bent program. On the back, in Camille's handwriting, was the set list Sylvia had wanted. 3 student names, 1 instructor acknowledgement, and the scholarship pledge before the donor thanks. Eleanor had crossed out the order in blue ink. Jordan stared at the lines. The night had given them another piece, not perfect, not enough by itself, but painfully human. A changed program held by the girl asked to sing over the change. Patricia saw it and extended her hand. "May I copy that?" Camille looked at Jordan first. He nodded, but the choice remained hers. She gave Patricia the program. At the microphone, the MC tapped once, smiling too brightly. "Ladies and gentlemen, if we could turn our attention to the plaque unveiling." Patricia stepped away from Benton and took the microphone from him before he could protest. "There will be a change to tonight's remarks," she said. And in the front row, the scholarship students sat very still, watching adults decide whether Sylvia's name would mean what it had promised. Patricia did not apologize before the microphone. That mattered. An apology would have let the room rest in feeling. Instead, she unfolded Camille's program, held it beside the printed remarks, and made the difference visible without turning the girl into evidence on display. Sylvia March's dedication plan placed the student musicians before the donor acknowledgments, Patricia said. "We are restoring that order now." A rustle moved through the tables. Programs closed, chairs shifted. Somewhere near the back, a man muttered that this was not the time. Jordan kept his eyes on the front row, where the scholarship students sat with their instruments tucked close, as if someone might still change their mind and send them upstairs. Patricia continued. "The conservatory also affirms that the East Ward Youth Orchestra will receive the rehearsal access and scholarship support promised under the expansion agreement. That language should not have been removed from tonight's remarks." Benton Hale stepped toward the side of the stage. "Patricia." She did not surrender the microphone. "Mr. Hale, sit down." The words were not loud, but they carried because people in that room had rarely heard Benton instructed like staff. He froze, then turned his discomfort into a smile that fooled no one. He sat. Jordan saw Nolan Price being relieved near the corridor. Reed accepted the radio from him with both hands, nervous enough to fumble the clip. Nolan looked smaller without authority attached, but not harmless. He leaned toward Reed and said something Jordan could not hear. Reed stiffened. Lena saw it. "Supervisor Price, step away from event staff." "I'm getting my personal property," Nolan said. "Your body camera and radio are institutional property until copied." His face hardened. "You think I'm going to tamper with it?" "I think we preserve first and characterize later." That sentence, more than any revelation, seemed to irritate him. Preserve first meant no one got to narrate before the record did. It meant he could not become a loyal employee managing a difficult guest. It meant Eleanor could not become a grieving daughter controlling a chaotic husband. It meant Jordan could not become either hero or problem without facts. Patricia invited the student musicians to stand. One by one, they gave their names. The boy with the cello was Marcus Reed, no relation to the guard. The flutist was Anika Torres. The violinist with the thin first note was Brielle Jackson, who thanked her grandmother for taking 2 buses to get her there on Saturdays. Their voices shook less as they went on. By the time the instructor spoke about heating failures, cracked practice mirrors, and Sylvia bringing soup in a dented red thermos during winter rehearsals, the room had stopped pretending the gala was only about donors. Jordan felt Eleanor beside him before he looked. She had moved quietly, without diamonds flashing this time. I didn't change the scholarship language, she said. He turned. Not the best place for that sentence. I'm telling you because it matters. Her voice had lost its public polish and gained something rawer, though not yet honest enough. Benton handled the remarks. But you moved the students, yes? And my credential? She looked toward the plaque. I changed it to spouse guest for the printed seating flow. I thought it only affected the display. Jordan stared at her. That is what I told myself, she added. It was the closest she had come to truth, and it still arrived dressed for appeal. Jordan wanted to ask how a display required blocking director verification. He wanted to ask why she had watched Nolan touch him and said nothing. But Camille was standing near the first row, pretending not to listen, and Jordan had promised not to put the night on her shoulders. You'll say that in the review? He said. Eleanor's eyes searched his face for marriage, not forgiveness exactly, but a private passage back. And us? The question hit harder than he expected. Around them, the dedication resumed. Patricia called Camille forward to unveil the plaque with the students, not with trustees. The blue ribbon trembled under Camille's fingers. Jordan lowered his voice. Tonight, there is the record. Later, there is us. Do not confuse the order again. Eleanor's lips pressed together. She nodded once, but it did not look like agreement. It looked like someone learning that a door she had always used no longer opened from her side. On stage, Camille pulled the cloth away. Sylvia's name appeared in bronze, but beneath it, in smaller letters, the scholarship sentence had been restored on a temporary placard Patricia must have ordered from the print table. For every child who hears music before anyone sees their money. The line was imperfect, taped at the corners, slightly crooked. It was more alive than the plaque. Applause came differently this time. Some people stood because they meant it. Some because sitting would identify them. Jordan did not stand right away. He watched Marcus the cellist read the words twice, his bow hand opening and closing at his side, and felt his father's old shop in the back of his mind, the locked door, the tools withheld, the silence at the kitchen table. Then he stood, trust counsel joined by speakerphone in a small rehearsal room 20 minutes later. Not the grand board salon Benton wanted, but room 3B, where the radiator knocked and one wall still showed pale rectangles where old posters had faded around newer ones. Jordan sat across from Patricia, Marisol, Lena, and a board secretary typing minutes. Eleanor sat 3 chairs away. Benton stood until Marisol told him the meeting would not proceed with him hovering over the minutes. The counsel's voice came through flat and clear. Pending preservation review, the trust is placing the second renovation tranche on administrative hold, not termination. Hold. Conditions for release are as follows: independent log audit, written correction of the public program, reinstatement of community access benchmarks, and conflict review for all committee members involved in credential or seating changes. Benton's face darkened. That will spook the capital campaign. Jordan looked at him. Good, it should be awake. This time he did not regret the sentence. Counsel continued. Mr. Price is removed from event authority pending investigation. Mrs. Vance's temporary administrator access is revoked, Mr. Hale is recused from trust-related board matters until conflict review concludes. Benton pushed back from the wall. You cannot recuse me by phone. Marisol opened the donor agreement and slid it across the table. No. But the board can. And we just did. Outside room 3B, the gala music resumed, quieter now, filtered through old plaster and pipes. Jordan listened to it while the first real consequences entered the minutes, not as revenge, not as spectacle, but as ink no one could laugh away. The first argument after the vote was not about guilt. It was about wording. Benton Hale wanted the minutes to say administrative discrepancy. Marisol Grant wanted credential alteration. Patricia Bell asked the board secretary to read both phrases aloud, and the difference sat in room 3B like 2 doors leading to opposite futures. Jordan leaned back in the plastic rehearsal chair and listened to the radiator knock behind him. The chair was too small for a man in a tuxedo. Across the table, Eleanor had removed her diamond necklace and coiled it in her purse as if light itself had become accusatory. She had not looked at him since counsel announced the hold, but every few seconds her fingers returned to the clasp of the purse and pressed down. Credential alteration implies intent, Benton said. No, Marisol replied. It implies alteration. It prejudices the review. Only if the review was planning to avoid the thing that happened. The board secretary kept typing. Trust counsel on the speakerphone cleared his throat. Use neutral, factual language. Credential status was changed from trustee to spouse guest at 6:18 p.m. using a temporary administrator code issued to Eleanor Vance that states the record without assigning motive. Eleanor's eyes closed. Jordan felt no satisfaction in seeing it. He had expected satisfaction to arrive by now, some clean inner click that matched the public reversal. Instead, he felt the dull ache of a house key in his pocket and no certainty about the door it belonged to. Victory, if this was the beginning of it, had poor timing and fluorescent light. Lena Ortiz placed a small evidence bag on the table. Inside was Nolan Price's body camera, tagged with the time and device number, copied to the secure drive, original sealed. Reed witnessed the transfer. Benton scoffed. We are bagging cameras now? Yes, Lena said, because the supervisor initially failed to disclose it was recording. Nolan, seated near the wall with his jacket open and his tie loosened, sat up. I didn't fail to disclose anything. Nobody asked until after everyone decided I was the villain. Patricia turned to him. This is your opportunity to provide a statement. My statement is simple. Mrs. Vance told me her husband was creating discomfort at intake. I observed him refusing redirection. I moved him away before escalation. Jordan watched Nolan speak to the center of the table, not to him. The language had already changed into training words. Discomfort. Refusing. Escalation. All soft enough to blur the elbow, the ignored ticket, the unchecked card. Lena opened a laptop. We will play the relevant clip. Nolan's jaw worked. Do I need counsel? You may request representation for the full investigation, Patricia said. For tonight, we are reviewing whether immediate event restrictions were violated and whether records require preservation. The clip began with noise, strings from the ballroom, glasses, Eleanor's bright voice slicing through it. Not that line, sweetheart. That one is for patrons. Jordan looked down at his hands. He had lived the sentence once. Hearing it replayed was different. It became smaller and uglier, stripped of chandelier light. On the screen, his own face remained controlled, almost blank, which made him feel strangely distant from himself. He saw Maya behind the desk, saw the moment her thumb paused on the cream card. He saw Eleanor step in before verification could happen. Then came his own voice asking, "Could you retrieve the coat, please?" The room heard Eleanor say, "Leave it. He can wait with the drivers if he needs air." The board secretary stopped typing. Nolan shifted in his chair. That was before I arrived. No one said otherwise, Lena said. The clip continued. Nolan entered, heard Eleanor call it one of Jordan's moments, and accepted the frame without asking for the ticket, list, or card. Jordan requested verification. Maya mentioned the blue clip. Nolan told her to step back. Patricia paused the video. Supervisor Price, at that point you had a staff member identifying a higher access protocol. Why did you continue removal? Nolan's face reddened. Because new staff misunderstand colors all the time. Maya, who had been allowed into the room only after Jordan asked that her statement not be taken alone with her supervisor, sat near the door with both hands around a paper cup of water. She looked up. I did not misunderstand. No one said you meant harm, Nolan said, turning toward her with a strained smile. You were overwhelmed. Maya's hands tightened around the cup. I was trained on the clips 3 days ago by you. The sentence stopped him more effectively than accusation would have. Lena resumed the clip. The camera caught Jordan saying, I'm asking you to record that I requested verification before removal. It caught Nolan answering, you can make that request outside. It caught Eleanor's smile when the donors laughed. Jordan wished the camera had missed that smile. Marisol leaned forward. The evidence shows a process failure before any behavioral threshold was reached. Benton exhaled through his nose. It shows an awkward domestic disagreement inside a gala environment. Jordan looked at him. You keep trying to make my access depend on my marriage. Benton turned his palms up. Your marriage is why you were there. No, Patricia said. The single word cut through the old plaster room. She slid the cream access card beside the donor agreement, then placed Camille's marked program next to both. He was there as controlling trustee, named guest, and funding authority tied to public access conditions. The marriage explains why Mrs. Vance had personal influence over staff perception. It does not explain away the rights attached to his credential. Eleanor whispered, "I never meant for him to be touched." Jordan looked at her then. She did not look away, and for 1 second he saw the part of her that understood the line had moved beyond embarrassment. Her lie had needed other people's hands, Nolan's hand, Maya's silence, Reed's obedience, Benton's cover, Donor's laughter. That was what made it larger than marriage. Meaning matters, Jordan said, but it does not erase what you used. Eleanor's face crumpled, then hardened again as if she hated herself for the near collapse. Trust counsel spoke from the phone. Based on the clip, the log, and the program record, the trust will require an independent review before any release of funds. Immediate remedies remain in effect. Benton stood. "Then you risk losing sponsors tonight." From the doorway, Camille answered before anyone else could. Some already left. Everyone turned. She stood with Marcus, Anika, and Brielle behind her, still holding their instruments. Her voice shook, but she stayed in the doorway. "The ones who stayed are asking where to sign for the student fund." Jordan felt the room rearrange again, not with spectacle but with consequence. Patricia looked at Benton. "Then perhaps we have been courting the wrong people." Outside, a cheer rose from the ballroom, young and uneven, nothing like donor applause. Camille stepped aside so they could hear it better. For the first time that night, the sound coming through the wall belonged to the people Sylvia had meant to bring downstairs. The student fund table had been an afterthought when Jordan first saw it. A linen-covered rectangle near the exit, 2 clipboards, a small acrylic sign, and a bowl of blue pens that barely worked. It had been positioned where guests could pass it after collecting their coats, close enough to duty, far enough from glory. By 10 o'clock, volunteers had dragged it into the main hall. Marcus stood behind it with his cello case leaning against his knee, explaining the rehearsal access program to a woman who had probably never been told no by a clipboard. Anika organized pledge cards by amount because the pens kept skipping and people wrote over the same numbers twice. Brielle's grandmother sat nearby in a borrowed chair, correcting anyone who tried to spell the girl's name wrong. Jordan watched from the doorway of room 3B while consequences took on ordinary shapes. Not headlines, not ruin. A table moved to the center, a line forming for the right reason, a security guard no longer in charge. A board forced to read its own agreement aloud. Patricia came up beside him with the final event restriction notice in her hand. "Price has been sent home on administrative leave pending review. Reed will finish the shift under Lena. Maya asked whether her job is safe. Is it? It is if I have anything to say about it." Jordan looked at her. Patricia sighed. "Fair. The written notice says she is protected from retaliation as a reporting witness. Lena will move her off Nolan's schedule until the investigation is complete. That is better than anything to say about it. I'm learning." He accepted the page she offered. The notice was plain, specific, and imperfect in the way real remedies often were. Administrative hold. Independent review within 10 business days. Program correction to be issued publicly by noon tomorrow. Student placement restored. Temporary access controls suspended. Conflict inquiry opened. No dramatic collapse, no instant cleansing of the institution. Just enough structure to keep truth from being escorted out with a hand on its elbow. Across the ballroom, Eleanor stood alone near Sylvia's plaque. She had not left. Jordan almost wished she had, because absence would have been easier to hold than the sight of her reading the temporary placard again and again. Her face was bare now of performance. The room no longer gathered around her. The March relatives had retreated into their own wounded circle, whispering like people who had mistaken control for legacy and then watched both get audited. Camille approached Jordan with 2 paper cups of water. "You look like you forgot how to drink," she said. He took one. "That obvious? You do this thing where you hold cups like they're documents." He almost laughed, and the almost was enough to make his throat hurt. Your grandmother said something similar about forks. She said you ate salad like a deposition. She was not wrong. Camille leaned against the doorframe, no longer the singer on display, just an exhausted girl in flats she had changed into after the song. Are you leaving her? Jordan looked at the cup, at the crescent his thumb had pressed into the paper. I don't know. I'm sorry. That's none of my business. It became your business when she put you inside it. Camille nodded, but her eyes stayed on her aunt. She loved Grandma. She just loved being the keeper of Grandma more. Jordan let the sentence settle. It was too sharp for someone her age, which meant she had been carrying it longer than tonight. She crossed out your set list, he said. I let her. Camille's voice dropped. I argued once and she said I was being sentimental. Then I thought maybe I was. Everyone here always sounds so sure when they're wrong. Jordan turned toward her. You still sang. After you made it safer. No. Maya made it safer. Reed made it safer. Patricia and Marisol made it safer. You told the truth when it could cost you family peace. Camille stared into her cup. Family peace was already costing people. We just called it manners. Before Jordan could answer, Eleanor walked toward them. She stopped several feet away, as if distance had become a rule she did not know how to interpret. Camille, she said, your father is looking for you. Camille's shoulders tightened. Did you send him? Yes. Why? Eleanor's mouth trembled. Because I didn't know how to talk to you. That was not an apology. It was not enough. But it was the first sentence Eleanor had spoken all night that did not try to move blame into someone else's hands. Camille looked at Jordan. He gave no instruction. I'll find him, she said, and walked away, leaving them with the 2 cups of water and the sound of pledge cards being stacked. Eleanor watched her go. I thought if your name was everywhere, mine would disappear. Jordan nodded once. So you made me disappear first, she flinched. I need to say this before counsel turns everything into statements, she said. I changed the credential. I told myself it was display access. I knew it would make staff look to me first. I did not think Nolan would touch you. You watched him. I know. The words came out small, stripped of usefulness. Jordan looked past her to the plaque, to the crooked placard below it, to Marcus helping Brielle's grandmother cap a pen. Tomorrow you tell Patricia and the reviewer exactly that. Not a cleaner version. And after tomorrow, he felt the house key again, cold through his pocket lining. After tomorrow, I go home to pack a bag. Eleanor's eyes filled. Jordan, I am not ending a marriage in a gala hallway. I am also not carrying it back into our house like nothing happened. She covered her mouth, and for a moment he saw grief without command. It moved him. It did not move the line. At the student fund table, Maya laughed at something Reed said while showing him how to unjam one of the cheap pens. The laugh was brief, startled, alive. Jordan held on to that sound as the gala thinned around them, proof that the night had not only taken something from him, it had returned something to the room. 10 business days later, the conservatory issued its correction at noon, exactly as the hold required. Not a glossy statement. Not a paragraph about values shaped to protect everyone and name no one. Patricia Bell stood in the rehearsal wing with Marisol beside her, Lena near the door, and 3 local reporters who had come because parents had already been talking. Behind them, room 3B was open, its radiators still knocking, its folding chairs rearranged for the first Saturday class after the gala. The Independent Review found what the first night had already begun to show. Jordan's trustee credential had been changed using Eleanor's temporary administrator code. The change violated access protocol because temporary codes were limited to seating edits and display corrections. Nolan Price had ignored a staff warning, failed to verify a blue-clipped card, and drafted a preliminary behavioral note that omitted Jordan's verification request. Benton Hale had advised program changes while holding a conflict tied to a donor group seeking naming influence over the expansion atrium. None of it became a clean villain story. That was harder and more useful. Nolan was terminated after the review found a pattern of undocumented removals from 2 prior events, both involving guests flagged as not fitting donor floor expectations. Eleanor resigned from the gala committee and lost all temporary administrative access. Benton was recused from trust matters for the remainder of his board term, then stepped down when Marisol released the conflict findings to the full board. The second renovation tranche remained on hold until the conservatory adopted an independent appeal path for event access, a witness protection policy for staff, and a public dashboard showing rehearsal hours reserved for scholarship students. The money did not vanish in a thunderclap. It waited, with conditions. Jordan preferred that. Waiting forced people to build something instead of simply fear him. The first release came only after the East Ward Youth Orchestra logged 4 full weeks in the heated practice rooms Sylvia had wanted fixed. Parents signed in at a desk that no longer hid student programs near the coat check. Maya was promoted to operations coordinator after declining a private apology from Nolan that came through a lawyer and sounded more like weather than remorse. Reed stayed in security, but transferred under Lena's supervision, where the first thing she taught him was how to say, "Let me verify," before saying, "Step aside." Camille sang again at the reopening, this time in a plain black dress and sneakers, because she said her feet had suffered enough for donors. She placed Sylvia's dented red thermos on a chair near the student strings, not as a relic, but because Brielle's grandmother had filled it with coffee and declared history should be useful. Jordan stood in the back for that performance. He had moved into a hotel the morning after the gala, then into a small apartment 3 blocks from his office, where the kitchen drawers stuck and the windows faced a brick wall. Eleanor wrote her statement for the review without asking him to soften it. Later, she wrote him a letter by hand. He read it once, folded it, and placed it in a box with his wedding ring, not because he had decided never to answer, but because an answer given too soon would become another version of peace that cost someone else the truth. When the final condition cleared, Patricia invited him to sign the release in the new public music library. Children were still taping paper labels to shelves. Someone had misspelled percussion. Marcus corrected it with the seriousness of a surgeon. Patricia handed Jordan the pen. The board voted to name the atrium after Sylvia only. No March Family Edition. Jordan signed. Good. And the student fund? Separate trust, student majority, advisory seat by next semester. Patricia raised an eyebrow. You enjoy making boards nervous. No, Jordan said, watching Camille help Anika carry a box of sheet music. I enjoy making promises harder to move upstairs. That evening, after the papers were done and the library lights clicked into their softer setting, Camille brought him Sylvia's thermos. She wanted you to have this, she said. Grandma wrote it down. Aunt Elle found the note in a drawer and gave it to me. Jordan took the thermos. Its red paint was chipped near the handle. Under his thumb he felt old dents that had outlasted wealth, pride, and every polished lie told in that building. Inside the thermos was a folded index card in Sylvia's hand. On one side, she had written Jordan's name. On the other was a phone number for a closed community arts center in West Baltimore and 4 words beneath it. They locked the pianos. Jordan looked through the library glass at the students packing up their instruments. The conservatory was quieter now, but not empty. The work of one room had ended. The sound from another was waiting behind a locked door. He capped the thermos, slipped the card into his coat pocket, and turned off the last light over the signing table.